13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
All right, we're back at 13 Questions here. Had another episode. We interviewed Shayn Jones. Very cool. We got to sit on the other side of the microphone on his podcast here recently. So those links are going to be below if you want to see us on the other side. And speaking of which, Bill, how are you doing?
Hey, I am on the other side of the country from you. I'm doing wonderful. Yeah, this was a super fun one to do, especially since we were on Shayn's podcast. So yeah, it felt like we knew each other already and really, easy, free-flowing conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah. What did you think?
Yeah, Shayn's a fun guy to talk to. So we converse and get along very well.
Speaking of, collaboration, that kind of leads me into my gratitude for this episode. Yeah, let's cue up the jingle, yeah?
Eh?
Okay.
Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude.
Speaking of collaborate, well, actually, you know what? I want to take a second and just kind of explain why we do the gratitude jingle, because I was thinking about this earlier, and for any, I don't know, new listeners, I feel like we get a lot of new listeners because we interview somebody different every episode. But so the point behind the gratitude jingle is to get you to think of something that you are grateful for yourself also. So Adam and I just kind of do it as an example, and
I think it's even more than that. I mean, it's something we're all doing. I think it's an incredibly valuable thing for all human beings to do. And I don't know, there's power in ritual and power in group thought. And we are here because of that. So I don't know. I think it's more than example, Bill. I think you can have great changes by being grateful. It's the old ask the universe a question. It's going to give you an answer. And, if you are thankful for things, I don't know, it's kind of like a mantra, things just open up and happen.
Yeah, I mean, moving through life, the hero's journey with awareness and gratitude is integral to, having an enjoyable ride, I think. Gratitude breeds a lot of wonderful benefits, which is why we have the segment to kind of encourage people to generate that feeling, make that heart-mind connection a little bit before the show, kind of maybe, just get in that mindset before we really dive into the questions. So I just kind of wanted to explain that because I feel like we kind of gloss over that sometimes in the intros. So yeah, I just wanted to take a second and acknowledge that aspect, like the point behind it, right? So back to what I was talking about collaboration is just that, is collaboration. Shayn had us on his podcast, which he released today, which not that it matters, but we will be releasing this one in the following day, so tomorrow. So it's fun to time releases like this with people and to collaborate and create together. Speaking on collaboration and connecting people, right, and making these new relationships and forming, good habits and whatnot, we get to talk to all these interesting people on 13 Questions and get all this great advice. And it's fun to see our past guests get together and collaborate on their own podcasts, their own creative works, right? And that happened recently yesterday. Time is irrelevant when we're podcasting, right? But anyway, past guest Derek Condit actually appeared on past guests Alpha Vedic's show recently. So if you want to go check out that episode, both Mike Winner and Dr. Bear Paul Lando have been guests on the show, as well as Derek Condit. So all those three got together, which is the first time this has happened, which is why I'm pointing it out, because it was really great conversation. They talked about bees. So if you're interested in bees and Shungite, which is something that we like to talk about here on the show occasionally, Shungite, we have an affiliate with Mystical Wares, which is Derek's show, store, I'm sorry. But yeah, they talked about bees and a little bit about Bigfoot. So definitely a cool episode to go listen to. And they've all been past guests. So yeah, collaboration will be coming back on Shayn's show in the future. So definitely look out for that. And yeah, so that's my gratitude. It's just a lot of fun to collaborate and to build with other people, because it's just more fun when you do things, in groups, and everybody is enjoying what they're doing, and you're working towards a common goal. And yeah, it's all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put out a big gratefulness for modern technology. I'm very sparing with medical treatment on my pets, and Luna has fleas, so she doesn't get monthlies, never needed it, but she has fleas, and therefore I have fleas. So it's awesome that there is technology available that I can get and use and utilize safely with her. So I got a bunch of things on their way, and tomorrow is going to be Stop the Itching Day. But anyways, I'm grateful for that, because, there used to be a time when, the solutions were not as accessible or deliverable. You had to discover the remedy, brew or make the remedy, and implement the remedy in an environment that is, outdoors is bugs, so.
Yeah, I had to deal with that exact same issue later last year. I don't know, time's weird, but yeah, we recently had to do that I've got a dog and 3 cats. So yeah, the flea, there are solutions that have definitely made it easier to manage in this day and age. And even some, I don't know, some past older solutions, older solutions, right? But diatomaceous earth, like
oh yeah, I've had great effect with that in the past. There's some pretty good, oral medications, based on nicotines and things like that. So, not quite the super crazy pesticides out there. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool tools. But I'm not a doctor or a vet, so don't take my word for it.
It's important to take care of your furry friends. Bring them in when it's too cold, right? That's a public service announcement.
When it's too hot, Bill, what are you talking about? Put some water out there.
For listeners that don't know, Adam is in Florida and I am in Michigan, so it's still cold here.
Yeah, I am currently sweating my butt off. So as soon as this podcast's over, the door is getting opened and I am going into air conditioning. Anyways, the listener doesn't care about my sweat glands.
Yeah, well, if the listener does care about the show and what we're doing here, we would like your support. So please, the most important thing you could do is just to share the show and spread it around, spread the love, right? Share it with somebody that's close to you or that you care about, or better yet, go out and interview someone that you look up to and send it in, and we'll make a recording out of it, right?
That's right. That is right. And at the risk of going too long, Bill, everybody should, support the show. Check out the website. If you have questions, send them in. But yeah, you guys got a lot of work out there. We're going to be hopping on this episode. The links are in the show notes for us on the Guests podcast. And you got this whole episode to listen to here. So I don't know. What do you say, Bill? You say we jump in now?
Yeah. Another way to support the show is to support the affiliates. You can find all that information on the website, which is 13questionspodcast.com. Yeah, let's jump into it.
13 Questions with Shayn Jones. All right, we're here back at 13 questions. Today we've got with us Shayn Jones. Shayn, you're in the seat.
Feels nice to be in the seat. I'm usually not on the other side, so this will be one of my first times being on the other side, like you guys were on my show.
I was going to say it's a nice double role reversal, so should be fun. Well, you ready for question number 1?
Yes, sir.
What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it at all today?
I'd say the best advice ever given to me is probably to honestly be yourself, because honestly, it got me through a lot of tough times as far as school goes. That I kind of just learned how to just be my weird, unique self and not try to fit in with the crowd. And it works pretty well for this community too, because we're just a community of oddballs, so it kind of works out well in that aspect too. As far as like modifying it, I'd say the only thing that I would modify about it, just a little tweak to it, would probably just be to follow the things that you're interested in rather than, being pushed into things that people make you interested in. Because then I probably would have found my path a lot sooner in life if I wasn't trying to do all these other things that other people were telling me were cool versus the stuff I actually wanted to do.
Follow your heart, right?
Exactly. That's probably honestly some of the best advice I've ever heard from anybody, and it still holds true to today.
And then be yourself. That speaks to honesty. And Adam always has told me since I've come on with to 13 questions that as long as the guest is going to be honest with the questions, it's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be a great interview. So honesty is the best policy, right?
I agree with that too. It's kind of the same method as I do my show. I just like having an open conversation with honest people because that's how I am. And honestly, man, like if you start lying, you just get caught up in that shit. It's just easier to tell the truth.
Yeah, I consider it to be kind of like a core fundamental principle of life. All the negative and all the ills that come from obfuscation and lies out of that fear, that turns into, all the industry, medical, name the problem, environmental issue where something was covered up. We find out something was worse, but people knew about it. And that literally just comes back to that very simple, honesty, because ultimately as a group, we don't want to hurt each other. And if we all know about something, so yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, I agree completely. Say especially like being in a relationship, I've been in a relationship for the past 10 years now. And one of the key components, even as far as friendships and as far as just having a good working partner relationship it comes back to honesty.
Yeah, I was going to say that's integral to collaboration. If you're going to collaborate with anybody, especially in a romantic relationship specifically, it's important.
Lies are so much work.
Yeah, they are. And they'll start eating you alive eventually, too.
And the truth is always changing. So, ultimately, you don't want to build structures and have to maintain them and not realize they needed to get torn down, but you still got them in your head. So, yeah, if you just build on the truth, what's there is there.
Exactly. And then there's no reason to rebuild.
What do you willfully ignore?
I'd say probably a lot of criticism. I take it into consideration depending on who it comes from, but for the most part, when it comes to people just criticizing for no reason, I kind of just push that off to the side, especially, being a podcaster now. That's one of the key things you have to do. Not that I've had a lot of people try to troll me or anything like that, but it's definitely something that you need to ignore even for your own mental health, because like there's things that you definitely need to hear coming from the right people. But all the other random stuff from random people in your life, days, people that you passed throughout your day, like there's no reason to have that be a main focal point of your life, Like it's good to willfully ignore any type of bad criticism that isn't necessary. Because otherwise you'll start trying to conform to be somebody that you're not, just trying to make other people happy rather than making yourself happy.
No, I like it.
The criticism is harmful if done not from the right place, but it can still, I think, be useful. And I say that on more of a, I don't know, energetic level. I think I touched on this on the podcast that we did with, he was a guest on 13 Questions with Phil, Amish Phil, ignoring the haters and using even that ugly energy and transmuting that and using that as kind of fuel for like motivation even. Like I totally get ignoring bad criticism, because you're not going to take advice from, bad advice, right? Because there's a difference between constructive criticism, which comes from people that love you and want to help you, right? And then there's like the haters that you find on whatever pick up social platform network, right?
Well, you could also think of it maybe like a duck roll, you're just making yourself immune to it, waterproofing and brushing it off.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it comes down to too, is that it's important to receive it, like you were saying, from somebody that's close to you, that's saying it out of like the kindness of their heart, because it's something that needs to be said, versus just people just criticizing you, like say at work, because they don't like the way you walk, or they don't like the way you are for some reason, or they don't like the way you talk. That kind of stuff is like not needed. But like, if somebody that cares about you is like, all right, like it's cool that you have an opinion, but it's too much at certain times, that's like a criticism that you'd want to take into consideration. But if somebody's just outright criticizes every aspect of you and everything that you do, like that's definitely something that you willfully want to ignore.
Yeah, I'd say get that person out of your life.
Exactly. And if it's somebody you have to deal with at work, then you just got to ignore it, because a lot of the time you just kind of get stuck in situations where you just have to kind of learn how to kind of cope and deal with somebody, but, not take what they say to heart, because, all of us have been in situations like that where it's like, they're people we can't escape. Or, if you had like a bad home life, for example, and you grew up with like bad parents or something, like you kind of have to willfully learn to ignore their criticisms too, because their criticism isn't coming from a kind place. It's coming from usually a place of, regret in their own life. So they have to force that upon their children. And that's usually what it comes down to with most people that grow up in like bad households, is that, it's just, they're unhappy with something that happened in their life. So they try to make your life unhappy because they don't want to see you happy, because they feel like they deserve that. And you don't deserve to have that, even though you're their kid, which doesn't make a lot of sense either. But I know a lot of people that grew up in households like that. And that's another kind of type of criticism that comes from a close family member that you need to learn how to ignore too.
Yeah, for sure. We don't always have control over our environment, and especially, criticism coming from a family member that maybe is you're is difficult to deal with at such a growing up and being so young. But as I don't know, as we get older and we get to more awareness of how we can react to the criticisms on a positive way. How can we control kind of, I take it back to Stoicism and controlling what our circle of influence versus our circle of concern is. I don't know if that makes sense. The circle of influence is smaller than your circle of concern. It fits inside of it. So, what you are concerned about may not always be what you have influence over. So focusing on our reactions to the criticism is where is the key there. And because we don't have control over our environment all the time. And that makes me think in reality transurfing, Vadam kind of says that the driving force of not only a man, but men, like humanity in general, is to control our environment. So it's not really a need to survive. It's not a need to go out and hunt food or maintain these basic needs that comes with it, right? But we have to construct the end game is to kind of construct our environment that allows us in a way that allows us to thrive, not only just survive. So yeah, it helps to be aware of who you are and where you are in the environment, because like you said, we can't always control that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And pick your circle selectively, and anything past that, you may have to exist around them, like you were saying, but it doesn't mean that you have to take everything that they say to heart, because that's the type of stuff that'll destroy you. And you see that with a lot of high school kids,
Yeah, dude, kids are mean.
Hell yeah, they are. They're worse than adults by far, especially teenage kids.
What book has been most influential on your life, and why?
This one's going to be a hard one. Let's see. Well, there's one particular, I guess, one good book that I do like to take a lot of different quotes out of myself is The Teachings of Buddha. Not that I'm like a Buddhist or anything like that. I don't follow any particular religion, but I do like to take a lot of different values from a lot of different religions and kind of form my own philosophy of life based on that. And I feel like some of the best philosophy I've gotten as far as like how to go about life is definitely from The Teachings of Buddha. I've read that book a few times. I enjoy it. And honestly, it's just one of those things too that like when I need like little pick me ups as far as like, when the day might not be the best day, I like to go to the sections where there's a bunch of like little quotes from Buddha, and those seem to always be very helpful. So I definitely would say probably that. And what would be another good one? Let me take a little peek over here at my bookshelf.
What's the first one that pops out to you on your bookshelf when you look at it? Is there one that jumps out just by glancing?
Actually, I have one called Philosophy: The Power of Ideas. That one is kind of like a mix up between just a lot of different people's philosophies. It's actually a textbook, believe it or not, but I do enjoy reading it because it just has so many different varieties of philosophy in it. And I've always had a huge fascination as far as philosophy. And that's kind of like, I guess, where my show goes to, is that I like to think of very deep philosophical things and kind of see what people's reactions are to them. So I don't know, I guess I take a lot of personal teachings from just different philosophies. So I guess any type of book that would just have like a mix up of a bunch of people's philosophy would probably also be a very influential book in my life, because I can go back and forth on that stuff for days, and I enjoy reading every aspect of it. And I just like hearing about how different people think and how different people come up with rationalization for why things are the way they are, and how they carry themselves and why they carry themselves that way. Because I've always just had a huge fascination with like people in general, particularly people that are willing to go against everybody else to be themselves and think the things they want to think. So yeah, that'd probably be my two. Would be the teachings of Buddha and any type of like compilation book about philosophy.
A huge fan of philosophy myself. I mentioned Stoicism earlier, and I think I've got every textbook from college that was a philosophy textbook. I never sold those back to the bookstore because you got like 5 cents when you paid, like $60 for a textbook or whatever. But
I got like 3 college philosophy textbooks that I bought at thrift stores for like $2. So I'm happy that some people do give those books up, because I definitely take them when I do have the opportunity to get them.
yeah, I really enjoyed that topic in university or college or whatever. Ended up majoring in it, but I love the word itself. Like, it breaks down. I think philosophia. Philo is a Greek word for a type of love, and then Sophia is wisdom. So it's the love of wisdom. Is that something that you've thought about or heard of?
Yeah, actually, I've had a huge fascination with just words in general. Also coming from like the point of like I do like to write poetry. So there's like a handful of words that I would say are like beautiful words to be able to just look at, and I just like the way they sound and the way they look. And philosophy is definitely one of them. It just has like a certain ring to it. It just sounds it pleases your ears just to hear the word, and just the way it's written. It just looks so elegant the way it's written. Like I enjoy the word as it is.
Yeah, it's fun to say too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Just all the different variations too. Philosophy, philosophies.
Right? Philosophize, yeah. And
Or-
exactly. But I like that you mentioned the flipping to quotes in the Teachings of Buddha book. I used to do that with. It's a good book to hang out with, right? Just to have around and do that, like, I don't know, on a daily basis, but like every now and again. I used to do that with Ram Dass, Be Here Now. So I would just bibliomance a random page and kind of read and look at the artwork on there, and just kind of get inspiration from that. Or
It has one of those little the bookmarks that are built into the book that's like a piece of string. So I usually leave it on that page where it starts with all the little quotes. Just because when I do flip it open, I like having it. And then also, again, coming from somebody that likes poetry, I have a couple shelves here that are just different poetry books. So those are also books that I just like being able to just flip to a random page and read it. Because honestly, like I read a lot when I was in high school with, having to take care of a family and just a bunch of stuff going on with life. I kind of strayed away from reading as much. So my one way of always being able to still read was just I liked having poetry books to be able to just flip open any random page and be able to read whatever I felt like reading that particular day. And because of that, I feel like it kind of kept my reading spark alive. So now that I've been, podcasting more, I've made myself a lot of more opportunities to be able to read. So I'm getting back into reading as much as I used to. And just having the opportunity to just have like a quick little read kind of keeps your mind still in that mind state where, like I was always doubting myself that I wasn't a fast reader. And then my girlfriend gave me this thing she wrote out because she's a writer. And I read it within a couple minutes. She's like, wow, you read all that? You just skimmed over it? I'm like, no, I actually read it. And she's like, oh, wow, you're a fast reader. So then I actually started getting back into reading again, and I realized that I was flying through these books. So I kind of pushed some self-doubt out because I kept that spark alive, just being able to open up to random pages and be able to read some random things whenever I did feel like reading.
It's definitely been a hobby I've picked up again and increased since doing podcasting. And yeah, the rate of like speed reading or whatever, like it's so interesting because I can notice myself getting quicker. And because I don't know, Adam, have you ever like heard of the eyes only have to look at like the first and the last letter?
It's 100% true. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the core issues with dyslexia is people that are really good with 3D spacing in their or 3D visualization also have a hard time with words because it's such a linear process of needing to order things. But most people, yeah, you've probably seen in the email chain that goes around that does that. And your brain can recognize words first and last, random numbers mixed in between. They have some really interesting fast reading techniques that will flash words across the stream, but like highlighting them in red in a certain fashion. And you can drastically increase your reading proficiency even further using some tricks. I need to figure out what that is. I forget what that was called.
So I'll have to look into that too. I'm kind of interested in that. I just always like the aspect of like when I read versus like I love listening to podcasts. I do it all day at work because I kind of like to take the opportunity to be able to learn some new things or listen to lectures, listen to audiobooks, whatever I feel like listening to that day. But when it comes to reading, when you physically see the word in front of you, like I just feel like you just retain that knowledge way better than if you're just hearing it out loud. Like even if you're listening to an audiobook versus actually seeing the book physically in front of you and seeing the words, it's just your brain retains the knowledge a lot differently. I feel like you definitely have a lot more of like you catch all the little things when you're reading versus like when you're listening to something and somebody says some word that you don't really know or haven't heard before, you kind of just like glance over it, you know?
Yeah, and I think what this did is like separated out the words of importance. So you're not reading the and is. It's only, putting out, even, very things like that would get dropped off because your body or your mind is still perceiving those, but you don't need to read linear through. So if you can pick out those important things, your brain's going to squish everything together. So yeah, part of the, the job of reading fast is knowing what's important to be focusing on as you read. It's such a fascinating thing.
That is really cool to know about too. Because I was hearing something about that with Juan from the One on One podcast because he does a lot of reading and he says that he has his books that he like reads and then his books that he speed reads. But that's always something I've noticed as far as the English language is we have a lot of bridge words. So honestly, yeah, you take all that filler bridge words out, you're probably half the words you're reading. And then you're like you were saying, your brain will like compress the knowledge better because you're just picking up the important words instead of remembering like the very like just all the little random.
Well, it's still seeing it there. So in the same way that you only need to see the first and the last letter for your brain to fill in what should be in the center. If you're only seeing the important words, you're still seeing, the words that are supportive. So you will get the context without having to, go letter by letter in your head.
That's true too. Yeah. Say, because I've even noticed too when I read that it's like sometimes you'll kind of do this thing where it's like you'll be reading for a while and you get to a point where you feel like you're not even really looking at the words. You're just kind of like saying the words in your head as you see them. Like your brain starts to recognize just the word itself versus even just looking at like the first or the last character of the word. Or you just start like flying through it. It's almost like running, but your feet are going too fast and you can't stop yourself. It's a good way to describe it. You're just like, how am I still running? How am I not tripping?
Yep. Brain is more powerful than people give it credit for.
It's the best supercomputer on the planet that we know of.
Yeah, it's almost like you get into like a flow state a little bit when you get into a groove of reading. If you pick up a book and maybe spend 5-10 minutes and you just find, I don't know, speed reading. I find myself doing that sometimes. But anyway, we have a question 3 book catalog on the website. Listener, if you're looking for a good book to read, it features all of the guest answers to what their most influential book was. So definitely check that out. It makes a good reading list if you need a next book to read.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be checking that out. If you guys don't mind sending me the link after the show, I'm always happy to have recommendations for books.
Sure. Yeah, it's if you go to the website, 13questionspodcast.com, there's a tab at the top, question 3 book catalog. You'll find it there. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think I already have the link, actually. I got it from our last show.
Question number 4. What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think it's important?
Um, let's see. I would say probably going back to the honesty thing more so than anything. I'd say that the reason why would just be for the sake of, it's all about, like, I don't want to be perceived as a liar. I don't want to be that person that people can't trust. So I figure in my mind that if I start giving a reason for people to not trust me, then it's just gonna have that cloud over me, and it's gonna bother me personally. Where even if people don't like me, at least I can say that I'm an honest person with them, and they can't hate me for that or think that I'm some kind of backstabber or anything like that. So definitely, I'd say, like, I've had my hard times where, back in my alcoholic days, I tried to get away with a lot of stuff as far as like my girlfriend and stuff goes. And once I got sober, I kind of vowed to myself not to lie to her about anything anymore. And I've kind of carried that with almost everybody. And it's kind of been like a personal rule in a sense that, I just want to be upfront with everybody. So, the Shayn you see is the Shayn you get. Like, I'm not anybody different, talking to any other different people. Like, I'm as honest I can possibly be, and I'll be as respectful as I can possibly be until somebody wants to disrespect me. And then rather than disrespect them, I kind of just cut them out. And, I'll give them the minimal, but I'm still not going to lie to them because, again, if you start building that base of distrust, it's never going to go away.
Yeah, I mean, everybody. I mean, honestly, honesty is the best policy, and everybody's got this built-in like sixth sense, like a bullshit meter. Like that's, and you can tell when someone's being dishonest, or it's the same way you can tell when a comedian is doing poorly because they're not being authentic. They're not speaking from the heart, and it's also the same. Should be the same faculty that allows us to tell like when someone's feeding us a line of bullshit, right? So yeah, we're all about honesty, like we said earlier, and just being yourself. And I think from being on your show that you've done a great job of doing that. That's how you come across to me anyway. So yeah, man.
Hey man, I try my best. And it's just a matter of too that like coming from somebody too that when I try to be as honest as possible, I've always been, like I was saying, with even with the philosophy thing, like an observer of other people. So when it comes down to it, when you start becoming a truly honest person, you start being able to catch on lies from other people very easily, even through their body language, even through text and stuff. You can kind of tell through different typing patterns, or you'll notice that they'll like do short responses for certain things. And like one thing I feel like I've gotten very good at in my life is that, like, I may play dumb with some people, but like I know when anybody's lying to me. I know when people aren't being truthful. I know when they're what they're really trying to do when they're trying to play a game with me, because I've been such an observant person my entire life that, like, it kind of comes into play that, as soon as somebody distrusts you and they start noticing that you do just certain things with your body whenever you lie, then it just opens up like a whole entire doorway where, you may not even think you're doing it intentionally. Like if somebody notices you always scratch your head when you lie, for example, and you're not lying this particular time and your head was itchy, so you're scratching your head, like they're going to instantly assume you're a liar just off of the previous actions that you've done. And especially if they're an observant person, they're going to catch on those little things that you do.
Yeah, I mean, Adam's an expert in this. Adam's a very skilled interrogator, right?
I am very highly fascinated by body language, what it reveals, how much you tell. Because everybody's telling the story through their muscles, through their body, through the things that you say. So absolutely, and it's like what you said. There are people out there that are observant, and people should I mean that's a beautiful thing. That's how honest human beings are, and most people have a really good BS detector on some level. You sense things, you smell things. Well, yeah, we all can sense it because, we all don't like it. So I don't know, it's kind of a cool thing because as human beings, we are all apt to, fall off the path. But, we all have the tools to keep each other in line and make sure that nobody can truly pull the wolves over our eyes as long as we're talking to them face to face.
Hey, there's some white lies that are acceptable, but that's like a whole other story. Like if somebody's nice enough to invite you over their house and they make you dinner and it may not be the best, like you're always going to say like, oh yeah, it was great, it was wonderful, because there's white lies that are meant to be so that you can respect somebody, and then there's other lies that, like, I don't want to say that they're like there's not really a reason to always lie to somebody, but there's just certain little things where it's like it's not going to hurt them either way. It's going to hurt them more if you just tell them that you didn't like it, for example. So it's like there's certain situations, but for the most part, though, it's kind of like people kind of expect that in a sense, like if somebody comes over and they say, "How's the food?" Almost anybody that, you offered to make food for is going to say it's good. And you can't really expect that somebody's just going to be like, "Yep, it wasn't good. It was gross. I didn't enjoy it." Like, cause that's like a whole different other type of like brutally honest person where there's just certain situations where you just have to kind of put a little bit of fluff around it,
You could always just say the food. You could just say it's not bad. It's not bad, right? It's not bad.
Yeah, there you go.
Compliment, right? Workaround, loophole.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Give him a thumbs up.
If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most and why?
I'd probably say, well, my best friend would probably be my significant other. So I'd say that her probably main thing she would say that I need to work on is being more balanced. As far as like, I'm one of those people that kind of goes gung ho into things where, I'll spend a lot of time on my podcast and I'll kind of ignore other things, or I'll spend a lot of time on this and kind of ignore other things. So I definitely feel that it would be balance between everything, because that's kind of like a thing I've been trying to work on for a while in my life is, having time to do particular things that I want to do. And in order to do that, I definitely need to figure out a way to like, I don't want to say schedule like things, but just find like a good mixture of being able to enjoy everything and also be present for the people I care about, because I know sometimes I get a little bit gung-ho in things and I like ignore other things. And I don't always mean to do that, but it definitely needs to get worked on. So that would probably be the number one, I'd say, as far as what she would say.
Yeah, it's a daily task, right? It's trying to stay balanced, find that middle path. Daily grind, #daily grind. I don't know.
Yeah. That's the secret of life, right? It's balance.
Mm-hmm. Even with your emotions too, you don't want to go too far off of either spectrum. You want to, I feel like, kind of stay relatively neutral, of course, like be happy, be sad, but don't let yourself get into an extreme of either. So even when it comes to just emotions in general, like it's good to stay balanced even in that aspect.
Yeah, being cognizant of the peaks and the valleys and where you stand during those moments. So, when you're super sad, you can realize that this too will pass. And when you're super happy, elated about something, that's, fleeting too. That's what doesn't go away is joy, though. Like that's something that I found is good to cultivate.
Yeah, that is very true. But at the same time, though, it's like it's always good to be joyous. But at the same time, though, within joy, you tend to ignore small things. So sometimes you stay joyful, of course, but be observant while you're joyful. Don't let the joyfulness blind you to what's going on around you, because that's another thing I've seen happen in a lot of people's lives where they're just so happy with one particular thing that they let other things fall to the wayside without even realizing it, because they're just so into this one particular thing and being happy about this one thing.
Yeah, you got to maintain that kind of like third person observer viewpoint too. I was thinking about this the other day, how like you're running around in, I don't know, first person shooter games. The one that came to mind is Skyrim, because I still haven't beat that game yet, but you can
Nobody's did it all the way.
You can kind of toggle between, you got the view of just your hand sticking out, or you can hit the back button or whatever, and you can actually see the little character moving around on the screen. Like that's like third person observer view. Like, I don't know. I just had that analogy pop into my head earlier.
One. It's definitely true though, because you gotta keep yourself in mind, but at the same time you gotta see the drawback and kind of see. I don't want to say again like see what others perceive you as, but for your own good, kind of do that to an extent, just so that again you can be observant and not let things fall to the wayside. Because if you're really happy, say, and your significant other is happy, but they still have like a sadness to them, if you're just overjoyed at the moment, you won't notice that there may be a little bit of a sadness in them that might need a little bit of attention. Like it kind of makes you look over things, which is a good thing in certain situations. But I in my life have just always tried to be a very observant person, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. So I take that into consideration when I'm feeling excessively joyful too.
Yeah, you don't want to be the classic the fool, right? Like on a tarot card where, you're so caught up in something else that you don't see that you're on the edge of a cliff, by distraction. So Yeah, it's that weird edge of life that, falling completely into bliss or into a dream, may get you attacked by the tiger you didn't see sneaking up behind you, because the real world is still there.
Exactly. That's an even better way of putting it.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Hmm. Mysteries, more so than anything, I'd say. Like, if there's one thing that gets me excited, it's any type of mystery surrounding anything, because that's kind of what built who I am today, as far as like just being curious about a lot of different things and just the mystery of different things. It inspires me to do things, and inspired me to do my podcast, because there's just so much different mystery around a lot of different topics that a lot of people are scared to talk about. There's a lot of mystery even involving spirituality, that I'm still, nobody will ever figure it out until their time comes. But just that whole idea of there being something else to everything, and a different mystery surrounded by everything, kind of just entices me and kind of gets me going through my day on top of that. And it gives me something to look forward to, because if I feel like I know every secret, then I don't have anything new to learn. But if there's still new mysteries around the world or different things that we don't know, then there's always new information to be found out. So it just inspires me in many different ways. Like, like everybody likes looking into, I'd say, like, government conspiracies, but they're more on the dark side. But if you look into like cryptids, for example, um, spirituality, all that kind of stuff too, it can be extremely beneficial, and I guess turn you on emotionally also, because that kind of stuff will get you excited and make you happy. That you may feel like there's more to life than just going to work and doing this and coming home and taking care of your family, which is all great. I do enjoy doing those things, but just having the shroud of mystery around everything just adds an extra spice to life that gets me excited, I guess, in any way, shape, and form.
Yeah, I forget what psalm it is, but it always pops into my head when this topic comes up. But it goes, I think it's 52, I want to say. If I remember. See, they select so 52 or 25. But anyway, it goes something along the lines of it's the honor of God to hide a thing, and is the glory of kings to seek it out, or it's the glory of God to hide a thing, and it's the honor of kings to seek it out. Anyway, pertaining to mystery, we are the kings doing the seeking out, right? So, and it does absolutely make life more exciting, right? Because a mystery implies, that there's an answer to it, and like you were saying, you won't be able to figure out what the answer is until you work towards it, and it's your time to discover that or whatever, right?
And that's what humans are built on, man. That's what gets us going. That's what, people want to discover the mystery of whatever. And that's how technology advances. They wanted to discover the mystery of the new world. That's how we started colonizing back over here. If we weren't already over here beforehand, like, who knows? But there's so much mystery around everything. And if it wasn't for that, just the human brain naturally wants to solve puzzles on top of that. And we naturally want to explore things. So it kind of just pulls in every facet of being a human being to just adhere to those things, because that's, I feel like, what we're kind of built on and meant to do as a race of people. Because even if you're making music, like, you're exploring new sounds, you're writing, you're exploring new combinations of words. So it's like anything that goes into the creative atmosphere is, discovering a mystery in a sense, or even having these conversations. It's like you're discovering mysteries of other people. So that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah, and then when something clicks, when you're listening to a podcast or whatever, and you get a download or whatever, something just kind of connects. That's always fun. The fun part of the what did they call that? The Eureka moment, right?
Yeah, it's different. I don't know if other people have said it, but I always use different eyes, different prize. Because people have seen something 100 times, but you may be that new set of eyes that makes a new discovery on that, just because you have a different perspective coming into it that a lot of people may just be caught up in doing. It's almost like that concept of, like, when you're playing a video game and you're getting really angry because you can't get past this part, then you walk away for 5 minutes and you come back and you, like, refresh yourself, and then you beat it the first time. It's because you're just so caught up in that chain of thinking this specific way that you just need to step back sometimes and just have, like, a different set of eyes on the situation.
Yeah, different perspectives. That's one of our taglines here. At least one of the taglines I use when I post memes sometimes. But different, we're all about different perspectives here, and kind of gleaning wisdom from wherever we can, or at least at least the guests that appear on the show and other podcasts, obviously, anywhere you can get that anywhere if you've just got, eyes to see or whatever, right?
See, that's like how I kind of build my show too, is that I have people on there that like I don't necessarily believe in like flat earth or any particular thing. I may not be like a religious person, like as far as like one particular religion goes, but I like having a wide variety of people that have different perspectives on my show, just for the sake of just having different conversations with different people. Because if you are always talking with people that 100% agree with you, you'll never learn anything new. But if I'm talking to somebody that's very, very, very into the Bible, or somebody that's very, very into, I don't know, like, that's anything, I guess anything in particular. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything religious. It just gives you a whole different perspective on things. And then being a kind of a jack of all trades myself, it's kind of nice to be able to overview everything and see people that are extremely into one particular idea that I normally wouldn't get to talk to. And that's kind of how my podcast was built in a sense too, is just being able to have conversations with different people and learn their perspectives, going back to, again, always being that observant person that's just interested in people and their method of thinking and the way that they are.
What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
I guess my probably my most embarrassing and humbling moment in my life would be, I was talking about my alcoholic phase for a while, a little bit earlier, and there was one particular day, which is when I decided to get sober, that I drank way too much, made a complete fool of myself, was taking some other things on the side, ended up in the hospital, almost lost my family and stuff over it. So it definitely was embarrassing because I made myself look like a fool in front of a lot of people, which is another reason why I'm not really a drinker now, is because I don't like being perceived that way. Because I don't want to be the messy guy. Like if I do drink, I'll limit myself now because of just having that particular situation happen. And it was also extremely humbling because I kind of saw my place on what I should be doing, which was taking care of my family rather than just trying to drink. But I guess that also kind of goes into the whole idea of, for a while, I kind of grew up in a household where it was kind of like they didn't want me to necessarily be into the things I was into, or, be expanding my mind in the sense that I see fit, as far as just being able to ask a lot of different questions, look into alternative topics. So yeah, it just kind of put things into perspective, I guess, is the best way of putting it. That I realized that, like what mattered, I guess, because I was trying to suppress my mind, and that's why I drank so much. Trying not to like expand my mind how I saw fit. And then once I realized all of my errors of my ways and realized that it was never that I wanted to repress my mind, I was just kind of doing that to fit in. I more so wanted to be able to expand my mind and learn different things and do all these other things. It definitely humbled me in that aspect too, where I, wasn't trying to fit in with everybody. I was just kind of looking out for my family and myself and the things that were important. So that would probably be my moment, was pushing it way too far over the edge and ending up in the hospital because of it.
Would you say that was a near-death experience then? Would you call it that?
I'd say the pieces that I remember, in a sense. I've had a near-death experience a different time where I saw my life flash before my eyes, literally, because I was standing down, like where Chuck's back up, and I was working for a place that used to build cubicles. And the guy was like, "Hey, stand on here, tell me how close I can get." So I was standing on there, being a dumb 18-year-old, because I just got out of high school and I was just trying to work a full-time job. Like, back up. And I started yelling, "Stop, stop, 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 stop." And he kept coming, and he almost pinned my neck between the back wall with the back of the truck, because it had one of those little board parts that kind of stick out the lip. So that was horrifying. But as far as like this situation goes, the pieces that I remember of it were pretty much throwing up everywhere, my buddy bringing me home, me falling in my bathroom and face planting my bathtub. I remember a bunch of blood all over the place. And then I remember being at the hospital and pulling the IV out of my arm every time I woke up. And my girlfriend apparently said that I also threw up on the paramedics when they came to the house. So that was also an extremely embarrassing aspect of that whole thing. And another reason that I never wanted to be perceived that way ever again. So again, it was extremely humbling in the aspect that I never want to be perceived as that drunk guy again. After my kids, well, my daughter, because I didn't have kids at the time. I just had my one daughter. My son's only 5 months now, but like I never wanted her to see me or perceive me that way, because I also grew up with a family of alcoholics, and I never wanted that for my kids. So it was just kind of one of those trends that you fall into. Well, you're either going to go completely the opposite way, or you're going to fall into the trend. And at that time in my life, I fell into the trend, and because of me catching the error of my way, I jumped the complete other way, where I'm nothing like my family at all now.
Yeah, alcohol's a tricky demon to tangle with. It's something that I've had to recently tackle myself in 2020 more so. But yeah, it's definitely, I mean, they call it spirits for a reason, right? There's definitely some kind of energetic exchange going on there. But once you're on the other side, the grass is much greener. And I don't know, is it, yeah, you kind of want to tell people, but you can't really explain it to them. It's because it's something they have to do themselves, right? Like,
That's the truth too, and it's like I tell people now I'm open about it, because I feel like maybe I can just say the right thing to the right person one day, and it'll be the change that something they needed to hear to make that change. But coming from people that were never in that situation, it's like you try to tell that story, and they're getting like a wrong impression of you, and you hope that they're not, because of who you are now. But again, it's like still worth telling the story, because there is somebody out there that it will help. And for every, person that may perceive me as like, oh, that guy, he should just be a sloppy drunk, hopefully there'll be at least one that'll say, damn, that's me now. This guy can do it. I can do it. And as far as I go too, I was one of the ones that all my emotions would pour out when I drink. So, it was fun for some people that were on the positive side, but as soon as somebody got on my bad side, then it was just, all bad emotions from there. That, that's another thing that I was saying a little bit earlier too, is just kind of learning how to balance and control your emotions rather than letting them get the best of you. And when there's a lot of alcohol in your system, that's kind of a hard thing to do.
yeah, it's definitely makes it super difficult to maintain that middle path and manage the peaks and the valleys, because that's a daily thing, that the cycle that you're putting your body through. And then it's going to affect, of course, it affects your mind, right? Like it's poison. It's poison.
Even the cloudiness, just like the following day, like if you're a drinker and you drink all the time, even if you drink all day at work, like I was at that point for a while, it's like you still wake up the next day and you still have that cloudiness. Your body never fully gets used to it, so your brain's never able to like fully recover, I'm sure, from getting the shit beaten out of it while you've been over drinking.
Yeah, and a lot of the times when you do fall asleep after drinking, your body's you're not really asleep, right? You're not in that cycle. Like, you're just passed out. You're not getting any rest.
Well, they talk about that when people start hallucinating after stopping, alcohol for extreme periods, that you start hallucinating. But a lot of it's that you've been so long being sleep deprived and deprived of having dreams that you start having waking dreams while you're awake. Your brain is kind of going into these weird recovery phases that you've never been. So yeah, it has some strange cascading effects on the mind that people just don't understand. And, I always like to take an energetic view that, people, call it a spirit, and, people, joke that they, ingest mushrooms and see God or have experiences. Well, I mean, maybe there is, it's a plant medicine. There can be some negative side effects. It's not just that it's alcohol, it's like you said, it's a poison, it's a drug, maybe there is a spirit.
Say, not everything's for everybody either, because like from my experiences, after that, I kind of went through a psychedelic phase where I did a lot of like inner work on myself, just being able to kind of just like, I was never like a psychedelic taker that would go and hang out with people and party or anything like that. Like, I would strictly take psychedelics by myself at night, and I would just kind of get lost in my own head and my own ways and kind of see like the error of my ways. But I'm not saying that's going to work for everybody, of course. Sometimes people are fine drinking and they have no problem and they use it properly. So I don't want to put those types of people down either. But just everybody's different. So everybody's mind works a little bit different. So if you do need a vice, you kind of have to use it responsibly and figure out which vice is going to benefit you rather than push you back down into a hole that you don't want to deal with. Like, if you have a problem with, you have a lot of repressed emotions and you're trying to deal with them, rather than drinking and pushing them down or having them just get thrown out in front of everybody else and you don't remember doing it, you can sit by yourself with some mushrooms if you're the type of person that would work for, and kind of like work through it in your own head and feel better coming out afterwards. Because I had a heavy phase after my drinking phase where I was doing that with psychedelics, and I felt crazy refreshed every single time I do it because I would just notice different errors. And that's when I started trying to, like, I guess you could say, like, adjust my personality to the person I wanted to be rather than the person that I'd become.
What is your greatest fear? How did you overcome it, if you have?
I'd say that my greatest fear is probably losing my family for whatever reason. Actually, I guess I kind of have like a reasoning for it. Kind of had a weird family growing up, so I just kind of have clung to the family that I've created now. Just because they're kind of like the family that I always needed, because my family always wasn't the most supportive family. Like even to now, like I've told my dad I make a podcast, and he's pretty much like, "Oh, cool, I don't listen to podcasts." So if it was my kid, I'd be listening to every single episode they made. But coming from my unsupportive family, um, like it's a totally different thing. So it's like when it comes to my family, that my biggest fear would be losing them because of any of those reasons. So I try to be as supportive as I possibly can to my whole family. Particularly like with my daughter, when she's still trying to figure out what her interests are. So if she still has a little bit of an interest in art, I'll take her to the art museum, get her some supplies, kind of just like leave the tools there rather than forcing her to do something she doesn't want to do. And that's kind of how I play it, because the things that my family did, like, they kind of pushed me into doing, and they weren't necessarily things that I wanted to do. So I try to be different with my family, but it's still like I know that I try my best and that my family isn't going to go anywhere. But for whatever reason, it's still probably my greatest fear is losing my family somehow one day. And I guess it's not necessarily. I guess it's partly goes over to something to overcome, because I did almost lose my family as far as like the drinking part goes. So I guess the best way that I've overcome that is to actually be present for my family rather than worrying about what's going on in my own head and not dealing with it. Deal with it and get past that and just try to be present and be who you need to be for your family. Probably be the best way to overcome that fear. But it's still like an internal fear that'll probably never fully go away, because it's just one of those ones that sits in the back of your mind, even though it's not really like a relevant fear, if that makes sense.
I'd say it is, though, in the sense that your family is incredibly important and you never want to lose what's incredibly important. So, from that aspect, of course, it's always going to have that, that air of, mystique to that fear. It has to be there because it's of great value. And it's good because then, it gives you a reason to protect it.
Yeah, that is true, because that's what makes me, protective of my family, of course, because I would do anything for my family. And I know a lot of people say that, but, I'm the type of dad that if there was some dude that was like, 6'2", 300 pounds, and he was trying to hurt one of my kids, like, I'm not a very big guy, but I'm going to do anything I can for my kids to get away, even if I get squished into a little pile of meat. But, it's kind of like you push past the fear because the bigger fear is something happening to your family.
What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
Probably, I'd say just knowledge. That'd probably be my greatest driving force. Is just I want to be able to learn new things every day. I want to be able to learn about new things just that I've never even heard of before. And it's such a great drive to me that I go out of my way to, listen to lectures all day when I'm at work. I do my podcast. I read when I'm at home. So it's a huge driving force in my life, because I kind of feel like if I haven't gotten to learn something new each day, then I've wasted the day, even if it's something small. We only have so many days here. So I try to take in as much as I possibly can in the time that I have here. And I do everything in my power to make sure that can happen, because I don't want to waste an opportunity. And that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, it's a very admirable goal to have on your list, to learn something new every day. And it also makes a great icebreaker for like small talk, or like say you're a bartender and somebody walks in, you say, "Hey, what did you learn today?" Right? I don't know. It makes life more interesting all the way around, right?
Forget more interesting. We're all experts. I think about what I learned in school compared to what I've learned through, access to information. And, Yeah, while you're doing all those things, every single person, although we, seem to be slipping into this idiocracy type of, representation of the future, at the same time, so many of us are way more knowledgeable on other industries and methods of things and how things are done. And we can do it in a split second. What's the best way to peel garlic? All right, you don't have to go find a chef, go to school, or, have somebody with experience. You Google a video and find 10 cool ways. So, yeah, it's exciting.
That's the double-edged sword, though, is that the internet can have the really smart side and then it can have the dumb side. You could use it every day to learn something new, to explore new topics, to, just see the vastness of the world. And then the other side of it is, watching the same repetitive 7-second dance videos where 300 million people are doing the same exact dance and recording themselves, and you're just spending hours watching that. It's blessing and a curse at the same time, that all information is accessible at your fingertips.
And
they
they both feel really good. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the trend that people fall into, is that it's addictive, that you're just like, oh, that was a cool video. Oh, that was a cool video. I could do that. That's a cool video. So it's like people get that instant gratification, and then they post it for themselves and they'll get a bunch of likes, and they're just like, oh, wow, look how wonderful I am. Look how great I am. So then it's like they're totally content staying within that cocoon of, not necessarily doing anything to further your existence. Rather, you're just kind of doing the same shit every day,
That reminds me, I was listening to a video on the internet recently that was talking about dopamine, the difference between dopamine and serotonin, the two like feel good chemicals in your brain, and how these, like, every time you get like a thumbs up or whatever on Facebook, that triggers your dopamine, right? And that can kind of get down regulated the more that it gets used and abused, because we need more of it to reach that euphoric high. Whereas serotonin isn't affected by getting likes on Facebook, and it's something that, I don't know. I'm not a brain neurosurgeon expert or whatever, but there's definitely a difference there. So serotonin is more manageable, I guess, in that it's not really triggered by outside forces, if that's correct to say or not. But yeah, there's definitely
more like self-gratification would do that, rather than like, gratification from people on an outside source. Is that kind of how you're explaining it?
Yeah, I guess that would be a good way.
Like if you do something and you're proud of yourself versus other people saying this looks good and that they're proud of you, like it's like a totally different feeling and emotion when you feel like proud of yourself versus somebody else just telling you that they're proud of you,
Yeah, you're building yourself up as opposed to other people doing it for you, right?
Exactly. That's kind of how I took it, at least from how you described it.
Yeah, it's a good, I like it. Well,
Who were or are your role models, and why?
That's a hard one. See, like, I have I have a weird thing about like idolizing people necessarily, but I do think that there's a lot of people that have some very good qualities that I do appreciate within people. Going back to, again, like the whole Buddha thing, and the aspect of just like everything about who the original Buddha was, as far as like seeing like pain within people and just wanting to try to find a way for everybody to find happiness within themselves. Like, I would definitely say that would definitely be somebody that I would kind of view as like a role model, in a sense, is to take into consideration that, not everybody is where they should be, or, has the best life, and that it's a good idea to just try to find peace within yourself. That's definitely a good thing to live by. As far as like role models past that, let's see here. Probably if I had to pick somebody close to me, I'd say one role model that I definitely always appreciated was my grandparents on my father's side. My grandpa was definitely a man that went to work every day, no matter what it was, and provided for his family and deeply loved his family. So I definitely see that's some awesome characteristics to look up to in a person. And then my grandma, she, didn't always see eye to eye with my dad, but she always meant well. And I feel like my dad was too close to the situation to always see that. So she's definitely, I would say, a role model. Like I have pictures of her up and stuff around the house, just even besides the fact that she's my grandma. But like I still look up to her a lot, even though she passed away. probably going on like 15 years ago or so. And then let's see, besides that, honestly, I like a lot of the Greek philosophers as far as like role models go. I feel like a lot of them were onto a lot of very complicated concepts that aren't even fully comprehended today. You know, that we're still kind of just trying to decipher exactly what they meant by the words they say. But they definitely had it right as far as like, you know, knowing that you know nothing is definitely like a kind of a mind blowing concept that you'll never learn anything until you realize that you know nothing, and just different concepts like that. So let's see, my list would probably be there. Then Buddha, Greek philosophers, and my grandparents on my dad's side, but all for different characteristics and different reasons. But I wouldn't say any of them are necessarily idolized, but I definitely look up to certain characteristics within all those people.
Yeah, well, the Greek philosophers that makes me think of you mentioned the Socrates quote, the "I know nothing," or "the only thing I know is that I know nothing," or something along that. But yeah, the Greek philosophers that made me think of Pythagoras. That dude, I think he was Greek. Oftentimes known for the Pythagorean theorem, right? The triangle equation or whatever, which you see used in Masonic temples and whatnot. But there's a whole other, like, that guy like went to Egypt, I think, if I recall correctly, and studied mystery schools there. So he's not just like a math whiz. Like this philosopher, there was a lot more backstory to him, and he's super super old. Like goes back, older than I had expected. So it's always fun to dive into the history and the background of those guys.
Oh yeah, I was trying to find this other quote. I thought I had it on my phone, but there was another one that I really liked. That's pretty much roughly along the lines of, actually, here I might have it on my Instagram. I know I posted it recently, but it's definitely something I heard when I was a kid, and it's also just kind of been something that I've been into for a very long time as far as just the concept. Here, let me find it real quick. I know I got it here. Um, Here it is. It's Plato. Those who are able to see beyond the shadows and lies of their culture will never be understood, let alone believed by the masses. And as far as like me being more on the conspiratorial side of thinking, that's definitely been something that's kind of gotten me through life. As far as knowing that, I'm not the only one that feels the way I feel, like I'm the black sheep in society. So knowing that other people feel that way has helped me push through a lot of hard times in life and not try to just conform and be who everybody thinks I should be versus like who I want to be. Got to make sure I get the quote exactly right because it's worded perfectly.
What quality do you most admire in a woman?
Well, let's see. There's probably two ones that come to mind. One would always be, of course, honesty, like we've been talking about for a long time. Um, and I definitely like women that are strong and independent. As far as like my lady goes, for example, she's a very independent, strong woman, and I definitely appreciate that about her because I'm a very strong-willed person also. So I appreciate the fact that she's able to, not just be a follower, like because I've never been a follower. So it's nice to have somebody else that's also a natural leader in a sense that they're not following the crowd. Is it's very important because I feel like life would almost be boring if she just followed anything I said. Like it's awesome that she's able to have that bounce back and forth with me. And then again, she can be honest, so she can give me her honest opinion and not be worried that, she just is gonna have to fit in with me and be the person that I want her to be. That's all it comes down to, I guess, is that she's willing to have her own mind and she's honest about it. And because of that, I never have to worry about her straying away or, talking to somebody else or whatever. Like we've been together for going on 10 years now. So that's definitely played a huge factor as far as like, I know if she says something, she means it. And if she's saying something, she's strong and independent enough to say it and know that it needs to get said versus trying to just like not hurt my feelings and not say what needs to be said.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a good sounding board. Like that's something I've uh, come to recognize and appreciate in my soon-to-be spouse, Ellie. So yeah, that sounds awesome, dude.
I feel like honestly, all the relationships that last, those are two key fundamental things that are needed. is honesty and independence, because the other problem too is that the relationship can be toxic if one person relies too much on the other person. Of course, rely on each other because that is important, but also have the ability to still do things for yourself if that other person isn't around, because otherwise then it's almost like you're half a person in a sense when the other person isn't around. You still need to be able to be your full self and then just be a better person when that person's around.
Yeah, one of the things that her and I started to say back and forth to each other when we first started talking was that you are free. And so it speaks to the independence point that you were making, that we're both, free to do, like, we don't need one another. Like, we're here for each other and we want to experience life together and whatnot. So it's not that, there's no codependence or interdependence for two independent beings that, aren't, don't quote unquote need. It's a want and an expression of love. So I think it's beautiful. It sounds like you got the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you too, man. That's awesome that you have that. It's one of those things that it's hard to find in today's world. So if you find it, you got to do anything you can to hold on to it, because a lot of people are willing to just push off things and not work through things because we just live in a throwaway culture nowadays. But if you find that true person, like, no relationship is just going to be smooth waters the entire time. Like, you have to be independent enough to know that you could survive without each other. And in turn with that, it almost makes you appreciate each other more because you know that you don't need that person to survive, but you honestly just want that person in your life versus like needing them,
What is the most courageous thing that you have ever done or seen in your life?
Yeah, think about this one for 1 second. Honestly, probably I'm gonna go back to my significant other on this one too. Um, she was the person that taught me how to have a backbone. So because of that, it's courageous that she went through the tough times with the side of my family that I don't speak to anymore, because she saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself at the time. So she was courageous enough to stick through all of that, and she was willing to, help me become the person that I needed to be, which in turn was made it so that I could be the father that I needed to be and to be the significant other that I needed to be. So it's, she was definitely a courageous person for having dealt with all the bullshit that even I've put her through, as far as like going through my alcoholism, and that she still stuck around and, kept that want rather than need concept like we were just talking about. So just, yeah, anything she's done has been super appreciated through my whole life. And it may not be, like some big courageous thing, like I'm sure a lot of people probably give you on this answer, but sometimes it's about the little things, and the little things can be more courageous than the person realizes that they're doing at the time.
All right, we are on to the keystone question here, sir. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Let's see here. So I guess I can give you my fundamentals of what I feel like it means to be a man. And that would be to protect the people you care about, protect your kids, protect your views and beliefs. That's a very important one that a lot of people lose track of. And stand your ground when it's needed without being overly aggressive, which is where a lot of the issue falls in with people using the term like toxic masculinity. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that term, and I feel like the world today needs a lot more masculinity. So, but not to the point again where it's like aggressive masculinity. It's a matter of, again, just standing your ground when it's needed to be done and taking care of the things that you need to take care of. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you have to be some giant bodybuilder type manly man, anything like that. But as long as you're covering the cores, like, you can be a scrawny little guy or whatever. You can be a very womanly man, I guess you could say, whatever you want to call it. But as long as you're covering the core fundamentals, which are, protect your family, always look over your kids, stand your ground when it's needed, and never let anybody tell you that your like beliefs or views are wrong, and to hold your ground with your thoughts and beliefs if it's something that you truly do at the bottom of your heart believe in, are definitely this, I'd say like the stepping stones and the needed things that you need in order to be considered like a man in my eyes.
I love that you brought up the protection aspect again. To me, that speaks a lot to the warrior archetype, and not only that not only applies to being a warrior on the outside visible 3D realm, but doing the shadow work too, and being a warrior on the inside, because that's where the real change starts. You want to change the image, not the reflection, right? And so yeah, I think that's a great answer. And then the last part you said, without being aggressive, standing your ground without being aggressive, being a man and expressing this masculine energy in a loving way. That reminded me of how Mark Palmer Steve's Jr. answer was similar in that we had talked about stand-up comedy and stuff in that episode. So we were talking about like standing up with love, and I think you nailed it on the head without saying that without being too aggressive. I mean, you don't love is not aggressive. It's kind, it's gentle. There's a whole bunch of books on love you can read about, but yeah.
That's like a thing that's been like I'd say each generation the definition of a man kind of changes a little bit. Like as far as like my generation goes, I guess I'm kind of like in the middle ground of it, where like my parents' generation and their parents' generation were more on like you're a tough man, like you don't show love, like you just show how strong you are. And I feel like the next generation's kind of straying too far away from that aspect. But like as far as like my viewpoints go, yeah, it's about I always say there's two ways of saying things. You can either say things the rude way, which will never get anything done, or you can say things the nice way, which will actually get things done. And that's part of being a man, is knowing that you have the ability to communicate, you have the ability to think. You don't necessarily have to show somebody like how big your muscles are to get your point across. And that's something with a lot of previous generations. It's been about just like, I'm the stronger man, so listen to me, versus just using your mental strength, I guess you could say, another way of wording it, to get your point across in the same way and make it so people actually believe in what you're trying to say, rather than just doing what you say out of fear, which is another thing that I've always had. And, not that my dad was anything super duper crazy, but just like, spanking you with the belt, just shit like that. Like it produces fear rather than an honest respect for that person. So I don't hit my kids at all. And I sit down and I talk to them, and that's what they respect me for, because I get that point across where it's like, be a man in a non-aggressive way, because it's not always needed, but always keep that in mind as a last resort. Because there's sometimes where, you need to use your aggression if somebody's trying to hurt your family, for example, where you can't be rationalized with words. But if you have the opportunity to just sit down and discuss something with somebody, like that, I feel like should always be your first option before you resort to violence. And that just shows how strong of a man you can be, that you don't need to resort to violence to get your point across.
Well, and it's the old, if you know martial arts, you're way less likely to be involved in an altercation if that situation comes up, because, you're calmer, you have more control, you're not making decisions out of fear, you're more in the moment. So, yeah, it's a interesting dichotomy, that knowing how to respond and being capable of responding gives you the ability to not need to.
See, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I used to get bullied in high school. So I used to box for a while. So I spent like a couple years learning how to box. So it's, again, kind of like that too, that it's like just having the ability that you know how to defend yourself makes it so you can stay a lot more level headed. Like, what's that expression? I'd rather be a samurai in a garden than a gardener and on a battlefield. Like, just having the ability is better than not having any ability at all. But because you have that ability, it makes it so that you have a backup plan if it's needed. So then there's not as much fear involved, because you know that you can defend yourself if it does come to that, which helps you think more rationally. Because they tell you when you fight, you're never supposed to let your anger get a hold of you, because that's when you're not going to be fighting on the same level. You're not going to be thinking properly.
That's how marketing gets you. As soon as you start making decisions out of emotion, then everything's out the window. You have no guarantee that you're going to be doing the right thing, at least from a logical standpoint, because emotions, man, they go anywhere.
Oh yeah, that's the truth of it too. Because you see that all over the internet, dude. They'll purposely try to post things that get you angry or in fear, and then that's how they make money off of you. You know, like if they're scaring everybody that there's going to be a pandemic, that's why, you know, you can't find toilet paper, is because they just scared the hell out of everybody into thinking that there's not going to be any supplies. So they start thinking irrationally, and then they're not thinking about other people, and they're only thinking for themselves. And then you end up with a closet full of toilet paper and nobody else has any.
Yeah, it's a psyop. It's a psyops, right? You know, life. You can even say life is a psyop. It's all a mental game. It's 90% mental, 10% physical. But I like that you brought up the generational aspect of it, because I really think that's something I've enjoyed doing this show. Is I look at it as kind of like an ethnographic study of this question of what it is to be a man, right? And so we can look back at all these answers and all these wisdom that has been shared, and kind of, I don't know, trace it back through history. That's probably not the right word or phrasing, but it kind of keep an account and compare and really observe and see what's going on here, right? So I love that you brought that aspect up, because that I think that it's something that we try to emphasize here on this podcast too.
Because I mean, you definitely take your parents' generation and then you do your improvements on it, and that's kind of what each generation defines as a man. Is they take what their role model was, what they didn't like about that, and then they tweak it for their own, and then that's what becomes the next generation. And then the following generation after that will take the things that person did, tweak it to fit how they see fit, and then that's your next generation of man.
Yeah, standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
Exactly.
Well, sir, that is the end of the questions there. That's the 13. That's the top, the core, that is the cake, the caboodle.
Made it through the gauntlet.
And I enjoyed every step of it, because you guys made me think about things that I guess I normally wouldn't think about. So this has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. That's what we like to hear. Did you want to share with everybody where they could find you and your podcast?
Yeah. If anybody who's interested in, I guess, my method of thinking or the way that I am, I was saying, I'm kind of a jack of all trades. So that's kind of how my show is. So, you know, don't necessarily expect one topic for all of it, because everything's going to be different. But it's called Inquiries of Our Reality. You can find it across just about anywhere you can find podcasts, you know, Spotify, Apple, Google, Podcast Addict, Anchor, whatever you want to call them. And then if you want to find me on social media, you know, you want to get in contact with me, or you just want anything else, all my links are all in one place. I use Linktree, just make it quick and easy. linktr.ee/Inquiries of Our Reality Podcast. And then everything is there for you.
Good deal. Links will be in the show notes for ease of access for everybody. And thank you so much, Shayn, for coming on our show. We had we had a great time on your show. Hopefully you'll have us back. We had a great time interviewing you here on this show. This is unfortunate. We haven't had any repeat guests. It's an interesting idea that we haven't really explored too much. But yeah, dude, thanks again for coming on 13 Questions.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I definitely love to have you guys back on my show, because I love bouncing ideas off you guys, because both of you guys are very intelligent dudes.
Hey, right back at you, my friend.
I appreciate that. And I was gonna say, your guys' show, just an idea. You guys should do, you know, maybe every like couple years, if you guys are running your show, you know, pull some of the people back and just see if their perspective has changed. Because I'm sure that even after a year, you know, you might have a lot of people's different answers and perspectives completely change. Might be an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunities for growth. I could do roundtables, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of opportunity for collaborating. So yeah, we're looking forward to doing more of that for sure. Yeah.
And you guys are always more than welcome to pop on my show and stuff too. And little side show I do called Big Dumb Inquiries with Kyle Rainey from the Big Dumb Podcast. You guys are more than welcome to pop on there. We just discuss different news clips and just put our input on it. It's a pretty fun show.
Right on, man. Well, thank you. I will probably take you up on that offer. Yeah.
Yeah, both you guys are welcome. Come on the same episode, awesome. Come separate, however you want to do it. You're more than welcome.
I don't wanna hold night. I don't wanna hold night. No what? I don't wanna hold night. I don't wanna hold night. No what? I don't wanna hold night. I don't wanna hold night. No what? I don't wanna hold night. you wanna Hawaii yo wa? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii yo wa? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii yo wa?
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism.
How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii yo wa? How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii yo wa? How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii yo wa? How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii yo
Why is
wa?
there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. That night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii yo wa? How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii yo wa? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii yo wa? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii yo wa?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.